So we're live, and I have a special guest, my good old friend, Jeffrey Asselstine.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Thank you very much.
Good day.
How are you?
Well,
It's been a while.
Indeed. It's been a while since we've been here together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
Trying to run my business as best as I can.
Well, that's why you're here. We're going to talk
Indeed.
about your business.
Fantastic.
So, your Onion has been going for, I would say, 4 years, and we've been on a journey, and now we're launching season 3. And with season 3, I want to, knowing what it's like out there and running my own business for the last 8.5 years. Now I really, we know your backstory.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to know, what it's like on the front line in a way. And I think a lot of people who are thinking about bringing business here into Qatar, they want to get to know what it's like doing business on a daily basis. So this is what season 3 is going to be all about. I want to ask you the questions,
Okay.
and it's up to you whether you want to give me the answer or not. It's look, this is business after all. I went to an SME conference the other day. Basically, they were trying to entice British business SMEs to come into Qatar,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the only one who asked the question. No one else did.
Okay.
So, and it was, I was just basically saying, well, are the banks on board with supporting SMEs? And then the second question was about tender bonds and performance bonds.
Right.
And I just got an answer like, well, yeah, of course, banks will support you.
Right.
And yes, you generally will get an invitation to tender. So you won't have to pay your tender bonds and your performance bonds. But we know that's very far and few.
That's not been your experience, obviously.
That's not been my experience exactly. Yeah, but I think I might have had it once where the tender bond was waived. We were invited to do a tender.
Right.
But in general, no. So this is what it's all about. This is, I want people to really get a feel of what it's like to do business here in Qatar and the Middle East.
Okay.
I want to learn.
Yeah.
There might be, as we said just before the show, we have a regular Thursday meeting, and it's great for us because we're our own little support network, and we get to hear our own experiences, and we help each other from the different sectors that we're in. And you're a great help. Steve's a great help. And I want that to relate in this season. I want us to find out more.
I think it's a great idea. I think there are a lot of people in Qatar that there's quite a few that are running their own businesses, and also there are a lot of people that are looking to run their own businesses, whether they're already here doing their day-to-day job and are looking to maybe move out of that, or looking to take their businesses which may be outside the country and bringing them in. And I've always believed that this is absolutely a fantastic country to start your business or to bring it into. I think the opportunities here have always been large and continue to be large. If you're willing to be patient and work hard enough and spend the time to make it happen, you can actually do extremely well here in Doha.
And that can be my first question is, did you know that when you first started that you were going to be on this journey? Because you gave up a high-paid, powerful job, and you decided, okay, I'm going to give this all in because I can see that this is a place where everything is changing.
Right.
There are opportunities, which I was the same.
Well,
I wanted to be on that road.
Yeah, that's a great storyline. It's not quite my storyline. A large part of what you just said is exactly how I felt. As you said, most people know my backstory, but to give you the 2-second version, I was here, had a fantastic job with a great company, but unfortunately I was made redundant. So I was middle of the school year, I was actually middle of the school year. School fees were paid for the year. Thankfully, we had some financial cushion to allow us to do different things. And probably, again, like a lot of people, I'd always wanted to run my own company. but I never had either the courage or the requirement to leave the previous role and to go on my own. So, as I often like to say, I was given the opportunity, and I think it has actually been a real blessing for me and my family that we've switched from working for a big company to working for ourselves. But
it's still a risk.
Oh, without a doubt.
It's not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
you found yourself in that position, but
and I did the analysis, like you said in the earlier part, that I thought if I'm going to start a business anywhere, I'm absolutely in the right country to do so, because I think it was favorable to open up, and continues to be. In fact, actually, I think it's way more favorable now and easier to open a company today than it was 11 years ago when I opened up Nelson Park.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's a huge, huge difference, and I think. I think the financial, I always look at it this way, the financial fundamentals of the country are so solid, unlike some of our neighbors who don't have the resources that we have as a country that we're blessed with. Qatar is exceptionally well structured and well funded through the blessings of having natural gas resources, that it allows the country to do a lot of things that perhaps others don't. And I think it provides a good, and you'll hear me say this a lot, all the time, but probably a lot today, is that for companies that have a long-term view, then it's absolutely the right place to be. And your company, like mine, started before we'd ever heard of the World Cup, heard of the World Cup in Qatar, that is.
Yeah.
Before, we didn't start up with this idea of, okay, the World Cup's coming, let's try to make a fast buck. It was never that. That was never your vision. It was never my vision of where we saw our respective companies going. And I think that continues to be, one of the favorite questions that you get asked is, what do you think is going to happen after the World Cup? And to me, the World Cup will end and will continue on.
Absolutely. Business will carry on.
Yeah, and I can get into a lot more detail about it perhaps at another time, but I think just in general, unless your business is specifically geared for the World Cup, then I wouldn't be looking at the World Cup as being the great.
But I don't think most businesses are.
No, they're not. And that's why I think the conversation about what do you think is going to happen afterwards is a bit of a waste of time.
Absolutely.
Because I think you'll look at, the way I look at it, we arrived just before the Asian Games, which at the time was, it was a very, very big deal for the country. And the Asian Games came, and they went, and the country continued to go from strength to strength.
Absolutely.
And I think the Asian Games, like the World Cup in a very different level, in fact, several levels of magnitude, has been a real catalyst to a lot of other things happening in the country that have been, I would say not profitable, but that have been positive for the country.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that if you're thinking of starting a business here in Qatar, that it's better to think on a long-term basis rather than a short-term, quick buck basis.
Absolutely, and that'd be the case everywhere.
Yeah, but I think when I first started my business, I think there was a lot of people in town that were wanting a quick buck, seeing the opportunity. Where can I make the most money in the shortest period of time, and then get out? Yeah,
I think that's true, and I think you'll see that again over the next 2 years.
That's what I was going to say.
Right. In banking, we call it the shiny suit brigade. And they will start showing up with their shiny suits, and we'll be here with their briefcases. And so they call it, in banking terms, they're called the shiny suit brigade or briefcase bankers.
Why the shiny suit brigade?
Because their suits tend to be quite shiny. read into that as you will. And they're bankers that come just with a briefcase. So they're representing banks which are not here, are not established here. And they're looking to take money out of the country. And they'll come in and they'll leave as quickly as they arrived. And I think the businesses that will do well are the ones that are willing to commit. If I love how because I get older, I get to repeat old stories. And I can just.
Does that remind you of someone in the past?
Well, I think
with a rocking chair and.
Well, indeed, right? Well, it was April 1994 when I arrived in Oman. For my first ever Middle East tour, and the CEO of HSBC in Muscat said to me, "Jeff, the Middle East is all about relationships." And if I could reach out to Keith, if he's still around in the UK, I could reach out and he'd remember it very well. And I've quoted that now for about 26 years, and it's all about relationships. And I'm sure he added on through that conversation, it's all about the long term as well. And Well, actually, in our meeting today, Steve had mentioned, said, Jeff, you know a lot of people. And again, I'm really thankful that I do. And there's loads that I don't know. But those relationships are built up over years. I've done a lot of business as Nelson Park with ex-colleagues from my previous career, and including the actual institution that I left. I did business with them in one of my other companies. And you think, at the time you're leaving the company, that this is it, that's the end, it's the worst possible thing, and then you find yourself a few years later working for that very company that we needed to make a change with previously. And I think by looking at it long term, and by looking at most issues long term, is always the best way. Now sometimes you have needs must, as we discussed this morning on something else, but a lot of times looking at decisions long term and looking at opening up a business here long term is the right way to go. And there'll be, over the next 2 years, I really believe there will be a lot of people coming in, and some, because they are directed directly at the World Cup, it will be a short-term business by nature. But those that are looking to set up, if they have a much longer view beyond November, December 2022, they'll do very well with that view.
But that's it. You're right. There are some businesses that are very specific just for the World Cup. But I'm thinking, and fair enough, they're here to, provide a service, make money, and then they're not needed afterwards, which is fair enough. That's what we need. That's, we don't have the amount of business to support a World Cup. I don't feel that we do need external businesses to come in.
Yeah.
But it's those other businesses that come in because they can see that this is a place that is solely gearing up for the World Cup, have nothing to do with the World Cup, but will be able to take the money.
Right.
And how do they do that? How do they convince people that, you know what, this is what you need? Is it because there will be a feel-good factor involved and everyone will be like, there will be money splashing around closer to the World Cup? Yeah,
I think, to be very frank, when I started the company, I was in the country for a couple of years, so I knew the economic fundamentals well. So I was already convinced. And I think what needs to happen, and this is a combination of the entrepreneurs are looking to come in themselves, doing some market research and understanding, the size of the market and the opportunities that are here. And again, looking at the fundamentals to see, is the population growing? Is it shrinking? What's the country doing? What's the tax regime? What's the ownership structures? And I think if you dig in and look at the details, there are a lot of very favorable reasons why to open here. And again, looking at, the next 5-10 years, I guess what I was going to say earlier, you make your plans and you look down the road of having a long-term business, but particularly if it's truly an entrepreneurial venture, it'll change every 3 months.
No, absolutely.
Right? What you think you're going to start and what you end up starting or what you end up doing, it will change.
Guaranteed.
And I can think of how many, although it's always been Nelson Park property, how many different ways we've looked to do things and how we've changed structures as we go along and how we develop. It's changed multiple times, and I'm sure it will change more again in the future. But the ones that will do well are the ones that are always looking out towards the long term and looking to establish, relationships, which will take time. The other part of it is, I know a few people, and this is again as a global phenomenon, that are constantly looking at the long term and actually don't do anything today. In other words, kind of conference junkies and attending AmCham and QBBF for different things, and just like, I'm just going to keep getting information, and never actually, to use the phrase, pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And I think that's dangerous as well. Sometimes you just need to actually get started.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why I say there's a bit of a contradiction where you want to look at the long term and you want to have plans in place. But a lot of times you just have to start. So the fundamentals of the country are strong. You have your business plan in place, and then start moving and just be ready for it to change a lot very, very quickly. And don't be shocked. I've always thought I don't believe that a spreadsheet told Harold Schultz to charge $5 for a cup of coffee when he was looking at doing Starbucks.
No.
Now he wanted to bring experience. He wanted to bring Italian coffee into the Italian coffee culture into America. but I'm sure that his initial vision of where the company is not where it is today. It took a long time and many, many changes along the path to get it where it is today.
Absolutely.
And I think if you look at a very supportive organization in Qatar, like Qatar Development Bank, QDB, how it's changed over the last 10 or 15 years. It's QFC that you and I have discussed many times. The Qatar Financial Center is, I've known it since its inception, and in fact had a meeting there yesterday. The discussion I had yesterday, no way could I have had that discussion even 4 years ago. So it's evolved, continues to change, continues to open to support companies.
That's what I love about this country. They're always evolving, and when you hear people grumble, it's just like, are they grumbling about the way it was, the way it is now? But are they actually grumbling and realizing that things will always change?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, it's not perfect at the moment, but look at the huge development that's happened over the years and what they're striving for. And I always admire that and how far they've come within a short period of time.
Absolutely.
And so, my hat off.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just kind of mention the QFC again. If you look at the QFC, they did extremely well in their initial stages of what they've done. And again, they've evolved, right? They've looked at the market and said, okay, there are other opportunities that we need to support the country, particularly at the SME level. And they're very open for conversations. You can go there and have a discussion with them and look at different structures of different things that you want to do. And that just wasn't the case before.
No.
But again, they've evolved. I assume they would have had a conversation that went something like, okay, this has been great, but if we're really going to get larger and develop, we need to change.
Yeah.
There's only so many financial companies in the country that's ever going to be here. If we really want to develop and continue to grow, there are things that we need to do. And I think they've done a fantastic job of doing that.
Yeah, and I think also with QFC being set up, it's kind of, they've had to go out to the market as well to educate the various ministries, what they were all about. I'm still on the phone sometimes and saying, you need to talk to this ministry. They're not aware of your whole setup and the paperwork.
Yeah.
They're only used to seeing a local Qatari paperwork, but not your paperwork. You need to have that conversation, and they're always willing. They're always, yep, okay, great, thank you.
True.
So, anyone that's listening and is thinking about starting here in Qatar, what would be your first? I know you're not a startups expert, but from your experience, so there's various options that people can go down, and one of them is finding a local Qatari partner, or going under QFC. Now there's the free zone. And then there is a plan for Media City as well, which is going to be a free zone. Where do you start?
I think the starting place is to really just start talking, and that's kind of an odd way of describing it, just start talking to everybody, right? I mean, have a really good idea of what it is that you want to do. And then, start talking to people that are in the industry, that are in similar companies, find out what they've done. And despite what I just said about things like AmCham and QVBF, go to them.
You're right.
My point was, they are great institutions.
I know
right?
what you were saying. You were saying the ones that are here that go to these things and never do anything about.
And just kind of gather information
absolutely.
Right? Just go and talk to other entrepreneurs, find out how did they do it, where did they set up. I've made enough mistakes for 10 companies that I can share lots of my experiences of things that I did really, really poorly and things I did really, really well. And I can, I'm sure you're the same. You can share experience with people. And I think people that are starting out, they should be doing that, going around and talking to people and meeting people, but always have that vision of you're actually going to do something, right? Don't just look to gather information because you're going to be gathering forever.
Oh, absolutely. And everyone's got a different story.
Right. Indeed. And have a fairly clear idea of what it is you want to do. If you are a media company, then something like the QMC would obviously be a natural place to start having discussions. If you're, in warehousing and things to do with ports, then you obviously have the free zone. So you would focus more towards the areas that make sense for you, and start having those discussions, start going out and speaking to people. Because I think you will find today far more than you would, again, when you and I started. There's a lot more people willing to talk and willing to help you as you move along.
all right, look, we are oldies. We have been here for some time. But I remember when I first landed that, if we wanted to get on the internet, we had to go to internet cafes.
Yes. Yeah.
And so now when you look back, we are so much connected now, and you can find so much information.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first planning on coming over here, trying to find information about Qatar, and there was limited pictures. I didn't even know, now property.
Right.
You got Property Finder, you've got your website, you can find anything. There's pictures all over the place. So you get a good idea of the kind of property that you can rent or buy over here. Where when we first arrived, there was nothing.
Yeah.
So there is plenty of information out there.
Yeah. Was a good friend of ours says, go to the website.
Absolutely. He's a big fan of go to the website.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. Networking, going to, depending on what country you are, there's always different networks with your local community. Yeah. And you're right. I think a lot of people are happy to give information and share their experience because I always find that because we're away from our families, friends and associates are our new family, and we're always willing to, see who our next friend or colleague is going to be.
Yeah. And there's, reaching out to people is obviously very, very helpful. I think a lot of people have read this book, and it's been quite a few years since I've read it. But I'd always recommend two books to entrepreneurs now. And one to read is Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. And I wouldn't get too hung up on looking at it literally, although I like the idea of only working 4 hours. But there's actually quite a good sections in the book about testing your product, testing your business by using a lot of online resources. When you were mentioning websites, it reminded me of this. There are a lot of things that you can do to test your concept through, online services or posting ads or whatever it actually is, depending on what your business is, of course, and look at ways of just starting to test it. I wouldn't go directly to your own family to ask their view. I would go out to everyone outside of that.
Never.
Because you will get one of two answers. One is they'll tell you everything's lovely because they want you to be happy. And one, they'll tell you everything's terrible because they don't want you to risk everything. So both answers are really useless.
Oh, and then you get ones where you're talking to your competitors and they don't want you in the market.
Well, indeed. So it's, you want to kind of start reaching out and testing your market.
Yeah.
And assuming you have that ability. So again, 4-Hour Workweek talks a lot about this, about how you can go out and test a market before you start to actually do things.
Yeah, but that's going to be my next question is, okay, look, you're in a new country, you're here in Qatar. You don't know many people. How do you get your message out there? For me, I try to make as much noise as I could on social media. I literally banged the drum so hard, and I try to get Ginger Camel all over the place. So, and I didn't care whether you knew what we were all about, but you would see our logo. I would try and put it everywhere, whether I was doing a video website or whether I was just shouting out on social media or whether I was going to events, you would see Ginger Camel logo as much as possible. What advice would you give to anyone that's starting a business here from abroad or from within?
I think in regards to social media and getting that message out there, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've learned, frankly, a lot from you on how to do that. And I think one of the things that we've started doing as a company the last year and a half, 2 years, is doing a lot more on social media with a lot more, with some very, very good results. I think not doing that, you do so at your peril. You need to get the message out. You need to get your brand out. At the same time, you need to have something behind it, right? So you obviously, to state the blindingly obvious, if you just kind of, to use your phrase, kind of banging the table, shouting it out, and they make one phone call and the telephone number doesn't work, you're done. And
100%, right. And that's what I found. We had that conversation this morning.
Yeah, so without a doubt, get the message out. Let a lot of people know what it is that you're doing, but be prepared for the phone calls that you actually have delivery. So. Making sure that whatever message you're putting out actually is relevant and you can back it up with delivery, even if you are just a startup or maybe the company is yourself, whatever whatever that is, that if people start to call, that you can actually handle those calls when they come in, and that you're ready to actually deliver the service that you're talking about. I think again, something that you and I often discuss privately is how to get that message right. There's a tendency a lot of times now of trying to get that balance between what is it a corporate video, is it a corporate message, and how much of it is a personal one. How much about is making the company about you as the entrepreneur. I have somebody that I know. Well, actually, let me change how I say this. I think when they talk about, when they're asking younger people today, what do you want to be? And a lot of them say, I want to be famous. And that's not every kid by any means. And I don't,
no,
I'm
I
not
think
a
that
big
was
fan.
always the way. I think.
Well, it's not, I want to be the best. I'm sure not like to say I want to be the best real estate brokerage in Qatar, although we do. I don't want to be the best film producer. I want to be famous. And if by being the best film production company in Qatar, you become really well known for that, that's amazing and fantastic, and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if your goal is to become famous, then you're kind of missing the underlying point. And what I'm getting to is, I think it's important when getting your message out, and you can use a lot of images and visuals and videos of the founders or people in the company, and I think that's also a good strategy. But it must be about the company. It must be about what you're delivering, not about just trying to become famous.
No.
By having whatever the product is. And I think sometimes I see companies getting that wrong, where it's much more about the individual promoting themselves. Although I've been using my own image, but our goal in using our own image is just to make it more relatable, to see the people behind the company, so that people feel comfortable, like, okay, that's somebody I'd like to do business with. Well, this is
it. Business is about relationships with people. Yeah. So you have to give that side of the business over. But yeah, we've had various conversations, and where I feel businesses go wrong is that they don't really think about their content. They just throw out anything, and hopefully, it will stick. Yeah. And when I look at it, and I've pulled you up on several occasions, it's just like, why did you do that? Yeah. Why? There was no thought in it.
Correct.
What is the message that you're trying to convey to the audience? And when I throw it to you, you actually go, oh yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. We should have, because at the end of the day, no one knows whether it was the spur of the moment then, or whether you've actually orchestrated it to make it look, prime and proper, and, it looks swish and it's got the right messaging, rather than, on a whim, well, let's just put that out. And, you'll have more effect if you think about it more.
Yeah, I think again, you and I have discussed this, making sure you're really clear about who your target market is, who it is you're trying to reach out to, because different things will appeal to different people, and different ads. Some people will love it, some people will hate it.
Oh, I love the ad you shared with me the other day, and it was
indeed.
With that company, and it looked like they were a security company, but actually they were a real estate company. They looked like bouncers turning up at your door, and it was just like, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to scare you? Yeah, indeed. And it's hard, because when I say it's hard, because you're trying to think, how's it going to be perceived? And there's a really clever phrase, which I can't quite remember, but it's, I think of, when I try to judge myself, I'll judge myself based on my thoughts, because I know what I'm thinking and what I'm trying to do, and I'll judge myself based on that, but you'll judge me on what you see. Yeah, exactly. And clearly, because you can't see inside my head of what I'm thinking. So I'm glad.
Well, then you don't want to be in there.
Well, there are probably loads of Prince songs up there before I get to the actual reel.
As there should be. But as so when you're trying to get that message out, you know what you want to say, and so even just testing it, testing it within your own team. Say, what do you think of this? And then in using competitor video, say, what do you think of this? Does this work really well? Do you think, are they doing it the right way? Is it getting the right image across? And you can and this is where you can do some split testing. And again, this is where Tim Ferriss comes in and looks at how can you test the different things you're trying. And I think there can be a lack of desire to do too much testing, because you just want to get on with it. And, again, some of these things, the differences between kind of over testing and spending your whole life just testing and not doing anything. There's another great phrase which I've learned years and years ago is don't let good be the enemy of perfection. you can test forever. So don't test forever. Get it out there. But
you have to get
equally,
it out there.
don't
Absolutely.
just take the first thing that comes to your mind and send it out.
No, I've made that mistake as well.
When you were talking about some of the things we've done before, one day you come around the house and I'll show you some of our early ads for Nelson Park. Let's just say that it's not a good idea for me to be in charge of the ads because they were so poor.
Really?
So poor. Because I thought, okay, this will be fine. It won't matter.
Yeah.
And clearly I was wrong. And I think there's, a certain level you have to be at. But, getting it to a strong level to get it out there and get the message out and get trying it as opposed to I'm going to spend the next 3 years to make sure this color of blue is perfect. Just get it going, get it out there, but, invest the time to make it and do it right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How does it work, though? Okay, you're getting the message out there, you've thought about your content, but with the Qatari market, it's very fluid.
Mm-hmm.
It's very diversified. It's not like any other market. Mm-hmm. So how do you get the right message across?
That's a great question. I think when you talk about the market being diversified, I think that opens up, several areas of discussion around your team will be very diversified, right? Different countries, and obviously you have different genders and different ages as you do in any company, but here you have so many different cultures. You have different religions, different cultures, different parts of the same country where people are from, and a lot of different beliefs and how things are done. So that itself is a real challenge. And I think one way I look at things is constantly trying to get feedback from whoever you can. So we're constantly sending messages out to our clients, and we get a lot of positive feedback. We get some negative feedback, and listening to that negative feedback and really saying, okay, where's the value in that? When I say where's the value, what can I change about my company that this person's obviously very unhappy with? There's always a danger of thinking, well, that's just how they think they're wrong. Well, no, there's a message coming through that the market's telling you. What is it that I need to hear? I think one of the biggest, if I just come back to running your own business or being an entrepreneur, I think one of the biggest challenges is you want to gather that information, but then, and I've kind of hinted at this a few times now, you need to make a decision and then stick with that decision.
Absolutely.
And it's not that you don't stop listening, but there comes a point that you just need to make the decision and stick with it and maybe get it wrong. And then one of my favorite entrepreneurs from the US, he has this phrase that entrepreneurs are masters of the tweak. And for those that may not know, a tweak is just when you change something slightly. And I think really successful entrepreneurs are constantly tweaking things. So it's not necessarily massive 100%. Wholesale changes, but listening to the market, not changing every time you hear a different comment, but hearing the comments, thinking, okay, maybe I should just try this a little bit differently, try this a little bit differently. But have your own convictions about where it is you want to go and continue with that. Get the feedback. And don't be kind of blown off course by all the different parts you're hearing, but really listen to see, okay, where are there consistent messages that I'm getting where I actually do need to change something? But if you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different bits of advice. So trying to distill that down is a real skill, but a lot of times you just have to stick with your convictions and go with it.
No, you're right.
Including keeping your company going when people are saying maybe it's time for you to stop. In the early years.
No, absolutely. And I remember I felt guilty in the early days doing those tweaks because you have people that you're supporting, that are working for you. And I always wondered what it's like to work for an entrepreneur, startup, because it must be, sometimes you must walk in and think, oh my God, what's he going to do now? What's he thinking now?
Indeed.
And I always felt, initially I always tried to get a general consensus, but in the end you give up on that because you can't please everyone.
Right.
So as you said, you have to take the lead. You have to make that decision. You have to, be a leader.
Get that, ask the question, right? Get all the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you probably won't get consensus.
No.
So then you have to drive the line on what it is you want to do.
Yeah.
And that will hopefully excite a lot of your team, but it won't always.
No, and that's what I thought. Hopefully most of them are on board, and the ones that aren't and don't want to come on the journey, then they can go elsewhere.
Well, I think that's there are difficult decisions that you need to make, and I think if I look at your company, particularly, when you look at the number of years you've been through business, you've seen a number of cycles. You've seen how things have gone through, and you can bring that to the table. Again, you have the benefit of not being a startup anymore. And one thing I will say to, again, we've got a fantastic team of people. And what I will say particularly to people when they're relatively new into the company, it's not that we know everything, because we clearly don't, but we do have 11 years of experience of what it takes to make an agent successful. Yeah. So you can either follow our way based on historical, empirical evidence of what makes someone successful, or you can go your own. If you go your own and it doesn't work, it's going to be down to you.
Absolutely.
And if we can learn something from you, we'd love to learn it. But I'd really recommend you stick with what we've learned over the last 11 years, and maybe just add in a few little bits to make it a little bit different.
Absolutely.
But we can save you as an agent a lot of pain by following the examples that we've learned. In fact, the pain that we've suffered through. Why not skip over that?
Through all sorts.
Yeah, and why not skip over that and just trust us that we have a pretty good idea of what we're doing. And again, far from perfect, but striving towards perfection, and learn from that. And I'm sure, within Ginger Camel, you have similar experiences of, in this type of market we're in right now, whatever date that is, this is what we've seen, and this is what tends to happen, and this is what we need to do to improve.
Absolutely. Yeah. Makes you stronger, makes you more wiser. Oh, we sound like two old men now.
Indeed.
We sound like the two
Don't.
Muppets.
I know what you're going to say. Don't.
All right. So any business that wants to come in, you advise them on networking, getting as much information as they can by, going to various networking organizations, events, institutions, etc. You establish a business, you start doing business. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, you might be on your own, but then there might be a point where you have to start taking on employees. What is there a pool of talent here that you can pull on, or what's your advice, and where do you go? And hey, I'm talking to the right person, because you used to run a recruitment agency, so you've got that experience. And where do you go? Well,
Qatar is full of fantastic talent. There are a lot of people here, again, across many, huge background, huge experience in different areas. Any advice that I'm going to pass on about recruitment is advice that I've learned from other people. And, I think, frankly, particularly for a startup, your first hires will be critical. And you can make more mistakes later, but it's really important to get those correct, or do your very, very best to get them correct. And so to use a phrase which a lot of people talk about in recruitment is to hire slowly. When I say hire slowly, do a number of interviews. Have even people that aren't in your company, ask them, would you please come in and interview this person?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one thing I've really learned that I didn't do at the beginning, make notes from the interview, right? Look for, we all know about the halo effect. The second the person walks in the room, within about 3 or 4 seconds, you make the decision on whether or not you're going to hire them. Know that it's real and ignore it, right? Whether it's hire or not hire, think, okay, that's great. My mind says I'm going to hire them. Let's find out if there's anything, let's find out what's really in there. And equally, I've had people walk in and I've thought, no. And they've, as you go through the interview, actually, this person's really, really good. But just know full well that your brain's going to tell you the answer the second they walk in, and you need to ignore that. You need to talk through and spend some time. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking someone, particularly in the early stages when it may be just you or one other, have them come in for multiple interviews, even though they're all with you.
I was going to say, how many interviews do you do? Because I used to only do one, but then I realized that wasn't enough.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I used to always just do one, and then, sometimes it worked really well, sometimes it didn't. But a lot of times what I would do is, now what we do is we actually have a team of people. So normally 3 others on my team and myself will interview any new agents, particularly that come through. And I ask them for their written feedback as well. And because I want people to commit to what they saw in writing. Like, what did you see that, okay, this person is very professional? Great. Why do you say that? And so what we're now trying to do as well, much more, is if when people do leave, is do an exit interview, find out why someone left or why it didn't work, and see if there's any learnings in place. this is more of just a generic advice. As you know, I came from a big corporate background, and for years, particularly the last kind of 4 or 5 years of my career, I really regaled against the bureaucracy of large companies. And so when I started my own company, I thought, I'm not going to have any of that. And what that meant was I had no systems in place, no formalities. I thought, I'm just going to do this because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, been there.
And that was a mistake as well. So the phrase I love to use now is I want rigor, not bureaucracy. So you need to put in systems in place. These companies are big and successful because they've had systems in place. Now, they are often too bureaucratic, but there's a lot that we can learn from for those who have corporate background experience. Bring a lot of that into your own company. You don't need to worry about what colored pen you fill on the form, as some companies would worry about. And I'm saying like just the pure bureaucracy of, okay, you followed it the wrong way, do it this way, do it that way. But you need to have rigor. And so when it comes again to hiring people, take notes, write it down, ask for references, call the references. And I'll tell you this one for free. Great question to say to somebody, right? I think I've shared this with you before.
Yeah, you did
so
last week, or a couple of weeks ago.
Just need to say to somebody, if I'm to call your last 3 employers, what will they say about you? And you'll have your answer right there.
Yeah.
And those that are really good will say, oh, fantastic. I was just talking to my last guy last week, and this is what he's doing. Please, by the way, here's this number. Give him a call. And they'll tell you about they'll tell you immediately about their last 3 employers and how it all went. And they might have one story in there which they're not 100% happy with.
I don't think,
And as the advice I was giving them, everyone's allowed 1 out of the 3. But if it's 3 out of 3 or 2 out of 3, you might, again, have your answer of, is that the right person for your company? But I would really, everything we all read and we all know is that at the end of the day, the company is just down to the people that are inside of it. And it is so critical to get that right. And if I look back at the history of Nelson Park Property over the 11 years, I can pinpoint a number of key hires that had those people not joined us, I wouldn't be here today. They stepped in, they came in at really critical points, or even at a point that didn't feel critical, but they just brought something to the team that just changed overall how things worked and how things developed. And I'm very fortunate to have, those people that have come along over the years. And you can't expect everyone to be that transformational, but you will get them over time if you're patient in your recruitment. Because if you are too rushed, you'll pay the price for it. And that's a heavy price to pay often for most companies. Yeah. Superb.
Well, Jeffrey, we ended our time.
All right. That was great.
I don't want to bore. Hopefully this isn't boring for anyone.
I hope not.
So I hope everyone likes the new format. If I think of any more questions, I'm going to invite you in.
Sounds great.
Yeah. There is more questions. I know there is more questions, but we could be going for an hour and a half.
Okay, very good.
We haven't touched on certain points, but definitely bring you in. And maybe more specific on the property front. But no, this has been great. This has been a great podcast.
It's my pleasure. Anytime.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you for watching and listening. And hopefully we'll catch up with you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.